Hello and welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish. Today is Tuesday, December 16th. Holland Scollin, Quiscluttumuk, to Squamish Okmeo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting, which is Ms. Von Boudreau. Can I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Greenlaw. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We have no delegations this evening, so we'll go on to we're on item 4, which is unscheduled public attendance. So if anyone has a matter that is urgent or an emergent in nature, they need to get before council before we meet again next year. This would be your opportunity to do so. Seeing nobody, we'll move through that. We have no public hearings. We're on to the consent agenda. Is there anyone that would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Councillor French?
Yes, I'd like to pull item D, respectful workplace policy, please.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pettingill, I saw your hand too.
Yeah, 6B, 3, and 5, the Coast Mountain Trail Running and the public engagement opportunity, future of emergency management in Canada.
Okay, we'll deal with those items at the appropriate time later in the agenda. Does anyone else want to pull anything? Otherwise, I'd be looking for, oh yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
I'm sorry if I missed this. If somebody pulled B3.
Yeah, we got that already.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I'll move the remainder of the consent agenda if there's a seconder. Second by Councillor French. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. So we're on to 7A1, District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw for 1032 Finch Drive. And we will give staff just a moment to get set up and we'll get underway.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, Planner with Community Development. I'm here tonight to present an amended third reading for a rezoning application at 1032 Finch Drive. The subject property is 8,440 square meters and located at 1032 Finch Drive. The property is currently developed with a single unit dwelling. At the May 20th, 2025 regular council meeting, council gave bylaw 3153 3 readings and included the following conditions noted on the slide to be completed prior to adoption of the bylaw. As the applicant moved towards finalizing the land development agreement prior to adoption and preparing a development permit submission, they decided to reduce the number of units proposed from 40 to 38 for financial reasons. This would reduce the previously negotiated CAC target that had been presented to council and require the density section of the CD 119 zone to be reduced accordingly. The following amendments to the CD 119 zone have been requested by the applicant. Reduce the number of permitted units from 40 to 38. Reduce the maximum gross floor area permitted from 6,770 square meters to 5,765 square meters. And reduce the maximum height of a principal building from 14.4 meters to 10.68 meters. This slide shows the site plan of the original 40 townhome rezoning proposal. And this slide shows the revised 38 townhome rezoning site plan. The removal of the 2 units will be from Building 5 in the center of the site, adjacent to the community parklet area. Building 5 previously proposed 8 units and now proposes 6 units. The reduction of the maximum building height to 10.68 meters or 3 stories will also affect the blocks of units in the center of the site adjacent to the park. These were previously permitted to be 14.4 meters or 4 stories in height. These amendments will improve the livability of the project and result in less shadings from buildings 4 and 5. The proposed density reduction is below the maximum allowable density of 40 units identified in the Loggers East neighborhood plan for this site. Given that bylaw 3153 had received third reading and has not yet been adopted, staff are recommending rescinding third reading and giving an amended third reading to the revised bylaw. The revised CAC offer meets the policy for a townhome rezoning proposing 30 or more units. It should be noted that the CAC targets are not applied on the floor area being donated to the Housing Society, which is why the GFA numbers in the table above are lower than the maximum GFA permitted in the CD 119 zone. The difference between the previous CAC offer is $26,201 less for cash in lieu and critical amenities, 17.75 square meters less of gross floor area dedication to the Housing Society, $5,614.50 less cash in lieu of active transportation and parks. The applicants have noted the reduction in the CAC offer improves the financial viability of the project. The applicants are proposing the following additional amenities as part of the project. There was a previous commitment to reduce the building height along the property lines adjacent to single unit dwellings. This is no longer required to be secured in the land development agreement, as the overall principal building height in the zone has been reduced from 14.4 meters to 10.68 meters. And the applicants are still committed to agreeing to a taller garage door height. So the following items on this slide will be secured in a land development agreement. Council had requested the addition of a sunset clause in the land development agreement. When this application was initially given 3 readings, staff looked into the feasibility of including a sunset clause in the agreement. However, it would not be possible to include such a provision if the CAC cash contribution is being paid prior to adoption of the bylaw, which is the current district practice and policy direction, as well as accepted best practice. In the event that a renegotiation or expiry clause is negotiated, the district will be liable to repay any CACs collected. Staff do not recommend this approach. The CAC cash contribution for this application has been negotiated to be paid prior to bylaw adoption. Staff recommend allowing this application to continue to proceed under the existing development approval process as has been negotiated. To inform the community per policy, the project was posted to the district's development showcase and a development sign has been posted at the site. With that, staff recommend that 3rd reading be rescinded for bylaw 3153 and be given an amended 3rd reading as noted on this slide. And prior to adoption, a land development agreement be executed to secure the commitments noted on this slide and summarized in the staff report. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Council, questions about what we've heard here or included in the staff report? Go ahead.
Is there a legal obstacle to why a sunset clause couldn't just state, here's the timeline. If you don't develop by that date, you forego the CAC contribution?
If an applicant was in agreement with that, I suppose there wouldn't be, but I would be surprised if an applicant agreed to foregoing a CAC if there was a timeline associated in the land development agreement.
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Thanks staff for the presentation. What policy currently directs when we collect CAC cash contributions?
Through the chair, it is noted in the CAC policy, the preference is that they are paid prior to adoption of the bylaw.
And are we holding that in the current draft review of this DCC, ACC, and CAC policy?
Through the chair, no, because the cash commitments have been removed from the revised policy.
And so we do have some flexibility here, granted that those haven't been adopted as of yet, and they are still being refined. Given that this is at rezoning and CACs haven't been collected yet for this, we could choose to implement a sunset clause and just wait to collect CAC's cash donation at time of building permit, for example.
Through the chair, certainly you could do that. It has been, the advice we've gotten is that we should be collecting them as soon as we can.
And just to clarify, we collect DCCs at building permit, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Council, other questions? We also have the staff recommendation before us. If we're ready for that. Yeah, Councillor Pettingill.
It caught my ear, the suggestion that lowering or the changes would improve the livability of the site. I guess that raises for me the question of, are we not sort of setting enough expectations or mitigations when we go higher or denser?
Through the chair, I'm not sure I will give you an adequate answer to this question, but the architect suggested that there would be less shading on the community parklet and there would be slightly more space between the units. They noted that it would improve the livability of the site, and staff agreed with that assessment. I'm not sure that having 2 additional units would be significantly detrimental to that, but it was noted by the architect, and staff accepted that rationale.
Okay, thank you. And in fairness, and I apologize, maybe that should have been a question to my colleagues, but that just sort of caught my attention, that comment.
I'll take the invitation for a comment back on that. I think that livability isn't a binary. Yes, it is, or no, it's not. It's usually this scale. So improved is improved, and I would agree with that assessment. I think this approach of, I'm actually happy that this is coming forward and that we're adjusting, not because of the what was proposed, but I'm curious about the process for this. So we have something that just ultimately we got we're on the path to adoption, and then the proponent decided that the change was required. This approach of rescinding third and then approving an amended third, like what's the threshold between this and going back to the beginning of the process, or and versus accepting the adoption and then building not to the maximum that's allowable? Because what's proposed would be allowed under the first, what we provided third reading to. So I'm just trying to understand how these pieces interact. I get why they wouldn't want to do that from a CAC perspective, but just can you speak to that process? It hasn't happened a lot yet, and it may in future.
Yeah, great question. So really the main driver for bringing it back would be the applicant's desire to improve the financial viability. And because the CAC is based on the gross floor area permitted, it's calculated on what's permitted in the zone. So they would be paying for gross floor area they wouldn't use. And staff figured that these amendments are quite minor in nature to this proposal, and it was appropriate to rescind third reading. Before, when you used to have public hearings, you couldn't make changes to use or density after a public hearing unless the applicant agreed to it. So in this case, the applicant, there wasn't a public hearing, so that's a moot point, but this would be aligned with that if that was still the old procedure.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I think that this is one of the first projects, maybe the second, that we're seeing go forward with the proposal of donating units to the Housing Society. So I'm just curious what engagement we can expect through the development process on what the final product will be. Is it just like they get what they get, they don't get upset, as my 4-year-old likes to say? Or like, how do we make sure it's actually functional for the folks that we know will be moving into those spaces and their say in how that gets developed? Where would we secure that?
So through the land development agreement, it's secured the amount of gross floor area, and it's generally been agreed to that it will be 2 units. The applicants are proposing, I believe, all 3-bedroom units in this project, so it will likely be 2 3-bedroom units. The kind of general, once it moves to a development permit process, there'll be more kind of refined plans to review, and that can be shared with Housing Squamish for comment at that time. Really, we're able to secure the amount of floor area and roughly the number of units. There's not a whole lot of discretion on kind of the interior of the units, I would say. And on
If I could just add, the other mechanism that we will also need is a housing agreement for these 2 units. So that's where we would be engaging the recipient of those units, if we have one identified, which in this case would be the Housing Society.
And just on this point, as we're getting closer to realizing those units, do we have commitments that they're finished in the same way, or at least we understand there's an understanding of what that expectation is, so that there's not like a different standard, or is that appropriate, or just how do we understand what that is outside of just the sort of the floor area?
Our standard housing agreement has a clause that speaks to that the affordable housing units have to be essentially comparable to the market units on site.
Okay, and that's standard practice in the housing agreements. Okay, thank you. Other comments? Questions? Sorry, we're in questions. We do have the staff recommendations if we're ready for that. Or do you have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
And this is peripherally relevant, not entirely. So first, what's the state of our ACC bylaw? We've given third reading, and I don't believe we've adopted yet. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
In a world where we had adopted an ACC bylaw, where would this project, where would it sit? Would we be allowed to be doing this sort of reapplication process within the CAC framework, or would we be required to be in the ACC framework if we had the ACC bylaw adopted? And I recognize that's a hypothetical.
Through the chair, this is probably not the best example because this one would be grandfathered through the ACC bylaw process because this came in before that is in effect, or the change in the CAC policy. But take a new, well, I guess we could go with a new rezoning after the ACC bylaw was adopted. If they needed to adjust mechanisms in their zoning, this would be a similar process, but there wouldn't be, the CAC discussion would be strictly about on-site affordable housing or childcare commitments, depending on the scale of the proposal.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, Council, I don't see any other hands or through the speakers list. Do we have the staff recommendation or an alternative?
Before I put a motion on the floor, I just want to clarify with staff that while has not been our typical policy, we do have the ability to strike removing the cash in lieu amount at adoption in exchange for a 3-year sunset clause. That is feasible. So we'd still receive the CAC, but later on in the process, and we'd have a sunset clause on the LDA.
If we need a timeout, we're welcome to do that. But if you want to venture an answer, you're welcome to as well.
We would appreciate like 5-minute timeout.
Okay, I'll just do the last check with council. If we're going to have a timeout, I want to make sure we flushed out any other questions we may have. So if anyone has any other burning questions, this would be the opportunity. Yep, go ahead.
What would the CAC payment be in the new ACC bylaw framework? So what I'm imagining, if the developer chooses to not go forward with this for financial reasons, they may end up having to be, if there's some, if a sunset clause expires, they may end up being in an ACC scenario in the future. And I'd just like to understand what the consequences are for the development if that's the case, for the payment of ACCs.
Through the chair, I anticipated this question might come up, and the ACC would be $438,120. The DCCs under the new bylaw would be $841,000-ish, which is substantially higher than the current DCC bylaw by about $500,000.
Okay, so the big changes in the DCC. Thanks.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, so we'll take that timeout. 5 minutes has always been challenging, so let's take, is 5 enough? Do you want 10? 5's okay. All right, we're early in the meeting, so that's fine. 5-minute timeout. And so we'll recess the meeting. Let's reconvene at 6:50. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're back from a brief timeout to for staff to formulate an answer to an inquiry. So I will go to staff for response.
Thank you, and thanks for this opportunity to consider the question. We could delay collection of CACs in the land development agreement to 3 years from now. There are some real potential legal risks to that, in that there could be new case law that comes out that relates to municipal abilities to collect on CACs, given that we now have an ACC framework in place. Or could be new legislation that comes out that addresses, because we are in this sort of transitional period between CACs, which a lot of municipalities use, and ACCs. So that would be the only caution, that in 3 years from now, then we would have to go back and renegotiate with the applicant and bring it back to council, provided that is a possibility under the current, or 3 years from now under the legislated and the legal kind of landscape.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Thanks for that consideration. And I appreciate that the landscape can change. I just wanted to clarify that my intent wasn't that we'd collect the CACs in 3 years' time. It's that we would collect the CACs at building permit, that the land development agreement would have a sunset clause of 3 years from now. So hopefully they just move to building, and then we would just collect CACs as we typically would. But if in 3 years' time a building permit hasn't been secured or issued, then the land development agreement would sunset, and they'd go back to the drawing board. In which case there's a different regime potentially, but that's the way that I think we handle anything that is an in-stream application versus something that has fallen out of stream and then is reintroduced under a new regime. We have existing legislation that would protect that kind of system. So I'm just curious if that changes the perspective at all, that the limitation isn't on when the CAC gets paid at building permit. The limitation is on the land development agreement.
As we currently practice, the collection would happen at adoption. And then once we collect the money, that's it. Like, we've kind of locked in, unless we give the money back and renegotiate.
Just on this point, when are we next discussing the broader CAC, ACC, DCC sort of topic? Is that coming back to us soon? I'm just trying to understand this is an opportunity to have to take a slightly different course, but there's that bigger discussion around what should our common practice be, and I'm trying to weigh that out. So
through you, Chair, the ACC and DCC bylaw adoption, along with the revised CAC policy, is going to come per council in early February, or early to mid-February currently.
okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, I'd like to propose the following motion if Mayor and Council are ready for it. So it'd be as presented in this agenda and the staff report with the following amendment. So item 3 in the first bullet point would read that the cash in lieu of amenities, active transportation, and parks in the amount of $501,083.50 be paid at time of building permit. And then additional clause 4 be added, an additional bullet point that a 3-year sunset clause be added to the land development agreement. If it's seconded, I'll speak to it.
I'll just go to the minute taker to make sure that you got that okay. All right. And so were you seconding that, Councillor Hamilton? All right, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Thanks to staff for doing the work and working with the applicant to try and advance this. We know that housing is necessary, and that housing in this area has been planned for through the Loggers East Neighborhood Plan, and that this proposal comes in line with our community amenity contribution policy and donates some very much needed affordable housing to the region. My motion is presented with a shift in our current practice around CACs, I think is an important one. And while I appreciate steps a little bit out of line of where we have been to date, our CAC policy, we moved to advance collecting CACs as early in the process as possible, Because we saw so many developments not actually coming to fruition, and we thought it was important that we actually collect the money that we were expecting early on so that we knew that we could deliver on the amenities that our community needed. This does the same thing in a different way. It still means that we hopefully collect the CACs in cash at time of building permit, but hopefully it actually means that building permits come to fruition. And I think that this is important because a big portion of the CAC for this project, as well as others, has been in the form of built affordable housing on site. And so while we can secure the cash early on, we can't secure the housing early on. So this is trying to put even more emphasis on getting the needs of our community met with development hand in hand. And it does that by setting a sunset clause on the land development agreement while still securing the amenities that our community needs. So that's why I put forward this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we go, I just want to make sure this is a unique one where there's a rescinding motion in a, not unique. We've seen these before, but I just want to make sure I understand everything. Should this fail, the original third reading stands. Is that correct? Or what happens? Yeah, I just want to make sure that we understand that before we go deeper into the debate. I guess if the first thought is that we rescind third reading. So to me, that means that if this fails, then third reading stands. Is that correct?
Can I have a moment?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
If I could also then take this opportunity to speak to something else. In the situation where we expire the land development agreement and say it no longer exists because it's expired in 3 years, we would probably have to go back and downzone the property, because at that point it will just sit there with the zoning in place and no development agreement. So that would be additional resources for staff and council required to do so.
Thank you for that context.
Currently, if the motion is on the floor as it is with all 3 bullet points, if the motion fails, it kills the bylaw.
Interesting. I'm glad I asked. It doesn't. So I just want to make sure that we get this. To me, if a motion to rescind third reading fails, I would think that the original third reading stands. What's the mechanism that kills the bylaw in this case?
The second bullet point is that you're giving it third reading as amended. So if it fails, yeah, so correct.
Okay, I'm glad I asked. I don't know if that's relevant to the overall, but I want to make sure that we all understand where we are procedurally. Okay, other comments on this? Councillor Stoner has spoken to her motion. Other comments? Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I have been hesitant on these not being clear on the risk level. However, this actually proposes a reduction from what's been zoned before. So it's in a strange way, sort of less risk to the degree there is some there. So I would be inclined to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, I'm inclined to support this. My reservation in this change was the loss of the sunset agreement. I think that the move to the ACC regime alleviates a lot of those concerns, but we're not there yet. And so I think in the interim, I think that sunset agreements are, I absolutely see that they're a complicated tool, but I think that they're an important tool for us to use to make sure that we do, when we give a developer upzoning in exchange for CACs, that those buildings get built at a reasonable time frame. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments on this? Or just venture some of my own comments. When I saw this originally, I was debating with myself if this was just a path I wanted to entertain versus, well, you have the maximum zoning that you have and the CACs associated with it, and away you go. Do what you can inside of that space, but I do like the fact that this is getting a little bit less on the site, and that's helpful. So I'm supportive of this generally. I do think that the movement of I understand what we're trying to accomplish with the sunset clause. I'm actually quite supportive of that. But I do think that this discussion lives best in the upcoming CAC, ACC, the next touch point there, to make sure that we do this in an intentional way that makes sense, that can be done in a way that is consistent over the all applicants that come in. I think on this one, given that voting against this, if it fails, kills the whole thing, that's one factor for me. The other is that I do appreciate that moving the time of when the cash in lieu of amenities payment is deliverable would be beneficial to the development as well, as much as the sunset clause is a restriction. So I don't know how to score those two. I don't know if those are equal. And that's where further analysis would be helpful to apply this policy more fulsomely. But with the choice that I have in front of me and we have in front of us, I'll support the motion, but I do think that this matter broadly of sunset clauses in our development process is worthwhile, but is challenging to take on, and these one at a time pieces. I know this has come up in other cases as well, so we need to have that conversation. I will support this here and hope it works, but remind everyone that these pieces are captured in a land development agreement, which needs to be agreed to by both parties. So curious to see how that process goes from here, but I will support. Any other comments? That I will call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Anderson opposes. Motion carries. Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
before we move on, I'm wondering if I can flag, not for an answer now, but for a learning moment, maybe in the new year. We rescinded a third reading. Normally, if we want to do something differently, we have to reconsider. With readings, we can rescind. I'm curious if we wanted to rescind, or and find ourselves in a scenario where we want to rescind a second, can we just rescind third reading, or do we fall into a reconsideration? Just curiosity. And again, New Year's fine. It doesn't need to be now.
If you have a quick answer for us, I'd welcome it. Otherwise, I would like always enjoy the opportunity to understand our process better.
Sorry, could you repeat it just one more time? I didn't quite catch the.
So we just rescinded third reading and gave a different third reading. So we changed direction, which in my mind is very similar to a reconsideration. But with readings, we can rescind. I'm curious, though, thinking about this in the discussion we just had, if we end up having to rescind or wanting to rescind this again, is it just another rescind and you can endlessly rescind readings, but a normal resolution that's not a reading requires a reconsideration, or would this fall into a reconsideration if we wanted to rescind again?
If there's a limit on the number of times a bylaw reading can be rescinded. I would have to do some research into that. Yeah.
The reconsideration piece is a tool that is available on every decision we make at the table, with some limitations around legal constraints and so on, but generally. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you for that detour. I will move us along, however. So we have an adoption here, and as is our practice, we don't have a presentation on this. We've seen it before. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So next we are on to staff reports. So section 8A1, implications to local governments of Bill M216, Professional Reliance Act. And I'll give staff a moment to get set up, and then when you're ready, introduce yourself and run us through your presentation, please. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Bailey, Director of Engineering, and I'm joined here by Jonas Valniskis, Senior Director of Community Development. We're here this evening to discuss Bill M216, the Professional Reliance Act, and implications to local governments. A recommendation this evening is to authorize the mayor to execute the letter Bill M216, Professional Reliance Act, District of Squamish Response, dated December 16th, 2025, on behalf of council and issued to the Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs, the Minister of State for Local Governments and Rural Communities, and members of the Legislative Assembly, George Anderson and Jeremy Valerie. Sorry, I apologize for that pronunciation. The second recommendation is to authorize staff to complete a submission to the Select Standing Committee on Private Bills and Private Members' Bills through the consultation portal on behalf of council based on council feedback at the December 16th, 2025 regular business meeting. Our agenda for this evening is to go through some background on Bill M216, the Professional Reliance Act, and the Certified Professional Program, as well as we're going to go through some implications to local government, including the loss of professional peer review, acceptance of certified submissions, the broad expansion of affected permit applications, and liability. So we'll get started here with some background on Bill M216, the Professional Reliance Act. It was introduced in the Legislative Assembly of BC by MLA George Anderson on October 21st, 2025. Second reading was passed on November 17th, and the current status is that the bill has been referred to the Select Standing Committee for further review. The committee is seeking input with a deadline of January 6th, 2026. So in the bill, the purpose is stated that this bill provides for the streamlining of development projects and reduction of administrative costs in the approval of development projects by local governments. The next 4 slides, we're actually going to go through wording in the bill for accuracy. So and these are 4 of the main points that have been pulled out to highlight to council. This is not an exhaustive summary of the bill. So we're looking at the acceptance of certified submission. What the bill states is that a local government must accept as meeting permit or bylaw requirement any submission certified by a PGA professional acting within their regulated scope of practice unless the submission is incomplete or a complaint in respect of the submission has been made to the superintendent. On the right side, you can see a box. This is all professionals under the Professional Governance Act. On staff, we have professional technicians, biologists, and engineers. The bill then goes into, sorry, let's skip 2 slides. Here, resolution of dispute. So where a dispute arises between a PGA professional employed by a local government and a PGA professional retained by the applicant, the matter must be referred to the superintendent, which is the Office of the Superintendent for Professional Governance for resolution. What that means is if there's a dispute between district professionals, which includes technicians, biologists, and engineers highlighted in red, and professionals retained by the applicant, it must go to the province to resolve that dispute. Peer review. So the bill addresses peer review, which says a local government may not require a peer review of a submission that has been certified by a PGA professional unless authorized by the superintendent. Peer reviews are both done by professional staff here at the district and external professionals to support more complex applications. These peer reviews would not be allowed under this bill. So the bill aims to address liability for local governments, saying that no legal proceeding for damages lies or may be commenced or maintained against a local government in respect of the submission certified by a PGA professional. In future slides, we will discuss each of these and some implications we see for local government. Next, we've got a couple slides to discuss the certified professional program and define this for council if you're unfamiliar. This is an alternative approval process intended to streamline building permits and occupancy permits. It's important to note it's just for these two permits. It's administered by Engineers Geoscientists BC, EGBC, and the Architectural Institute of British Columbia, AIBC. This professional is independent third party who's either registered architect or engineer with advanced training in fire safety, life safety, and accessibility provisions of the BC Building Code. Really important note here is that the municipality maintains final authority over all permit decisions. This bill M216 is different because it would require municipalities to accept certified submissions without peer review, where the certified professional program is voluntary and allows authorities to keep authority while streamlining the approval process. The district's been utilizing the CP program since March 2022 through an amendment that was made to the building bylaw. So we're moving on now to the implications to local government. The box on the right is the wording from the actual bill. One of the big points that we see is the loss of professional peer review. EGBC, which is the Engineers Geoscientists of BC, describes the purpose of peer reviews. They're to determine the reliability of conclusions or work, review assumptions, processes, and methods, confirm the work meets objectives and is aligned with current standards, checks for omissions in processes and results, and assesses the reliability of assumptions. As I mentioned, on staff, we do peer review. We also outsource reviews for more complex applications with significant risk due to flooding, slope stability, debris flow, or riparian protection as examples. Now, as the bill states, we must accept certified submissions. There's no opportunity for staff to provide any insight then on local conditions, efficiencies between projects, alternative solutions with reduced maintenance, or doesn't allow staff to provide additional knowledge on increased risks that the certified professional may be unaware of. This process, as proposed in the bill, overlooks the critical review by municipal staff, not just professional staff, review by our planners and building officials. And staff regularly find errors in submissions that, if unaddressed, can compromise public safety, infrastructure integrity, and environmental protection. What's also very unclear in the bill is it appears to have a broad expansion of affected permits. As noted previously, the CP program only pertains to building permits and occupancy permits. As the language in the bill is unclear, it suggests that affected permits might be expanded to rezoning, development permits, temporary use permits, and servicing agreements. While the bill intends to cover liability, as you'll see here, legal counsel by Lidstone & Co. has made public the following statement that they believe governments will carry residual liability in spite of the attempt of the bill to cover liability. It means that if a village or municipality, in our case, and district, is found 5% liable, you could be subject to 100% of the liability. The Municipal Insurance Association of BC, MIABC, is also suggesting that if PGA professionals do not have adequate insurance, injured parties may seek recovery from local governments. I wanted to note for yourselves and members of the public that there are additional materials available in the report to council with statements from the Union of BC Municipalities to the Select Standing Committee. There's information from Lidstone that was quoted here in the presentation and a letter from MIABC. Thank you for your time. I'm here to answer questions with Mr. Belanishkis.
Thank you very much. Council, questions on this? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I guess two things. I may be treading into comments disguised as questions, but saw the regional district report on the same topic, and something that jumped out at me is concern about the ability for consultation with First Nations, that if we're required to sort of accept and act on PGA's report, that may negate perspectives of a First Nation and so on. Is that your read of the legislation? Are you in a position to comment on that?
Thank you for the question through the chair. We don't believe the intent of the bill is to really conflict with the processes in place to consult with First Nations. The bill, from what we gather, is really more technical in nature to ensure that signed, sealed, or certified submissions from professionals are accepted by municipalities.
But it would be one of multiple checks, and one of the other checks on a project would still be First Nations consultation, is your understanding then?
Through the chair, our understanding is that there would be no effect on that process. This specifically relates to submissions from certified professionals who are listed in the presentation.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing, I have a question about, this seems to be, from what I can gather, from the proponents, there's a theory that there's a widespread problem of municipalities using their own PGA professionals to obstruct development. And, my perspective is this is a very heavy-handed response to that. Has there been any sort of evidence provided that you're aware of that this is a widespread issue, or is this just sort of, as my understanding, the sort of political argument of the proponent, and we're just left to sort of bring a different perspective?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. The purpose of what we're bringing forward today is to address implications we see for our municipality, which were identified in the presentation. Certainly, we're not here to discuss any widespread issues. Our departments, both the planning department, which includes building and environment, and engineering, who deals with the servicing agreements, we're not here to obstruct applications. We're here as professionals to review submissions and provide professional comments on what it is that crosses our desk.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thank you, the chair. I will try and withhold my own commentary and narrative on the bill itself, and thank staff for their professional submission. I am curious about our own existing CP model that we've had in place since 2022, and I'm just wondering if we have any sense of how frequently this has been used, if at all, since 2022, and if it has been some high-level reflections on how it has worked. I don't think we've actually done a debrief on it since it was adopted.
Through the chair, thank you. That's an excellent question. We had, since 2022, we had sort of a slow start on the program, which was expected for a municipality of our size. We're, fairly small compared to Lower Mainland, which is where it's sort of commonly used. But we're now up to around 10 permit applications that have been submitted under the CP program with, I think most of those permits have gone through it. And it is useful and it does reduce the building code review time because our inspectors just do kind of cursory review of materials. The certified or the coordinating professional makes sure that, or is ought to make sure that the development permit is reflected in the building permit submission, the zoning is checked, but we still do a cursory review, especially if it's a new development or a first permit in that development, just to make sure our CP program allows that approach, gives us the flexibility. And then as we build confidence with a particular CP, that kind of oversight can be reduced and it makes things go faster. But there are cursory matters around the building permit that we would use a peer review process. So anything to do with, say, flood hazard in an area where we don't have a lot of information about flood situation, we might use a peer review process as part of the CP application.
That's really helpful insight, and one that I'm just curious why we didn't choose to include some of that feedback in our draft letter. And I asked this specifically because I listened to MLA Anderson's comments in the legislature, and he specifically called out Squamish as somebody who has a CP program. And so I just wonder if some of our feedback in terms of the experience that we have, that this program is actually being used where it makes sense, might be helpful to include if that's something that we feel comfortable doing.
Thank you for the input. Through research, it does appear that that there is some confusion that this bill is almost building is expanding on the CP program, but that is definitely not what this is. So the draft letter was very specific to what is actually in the bill and the implications for local governments that we see in that bill. And this is a very different from what the CP program is. So it was thought that it was almost strategic to keep these things separate so that we're trying to limit the confusion and clarify that this is very different from the CP program. But if you'd like to direct that, it can pass that motion and that can be included and worded carefully.
Thank you for that feedback.
Council, other questions? I was curious, as I was reading this, I was thinking about a few and reading other submissions on this matter. It's been a hot topic. I was curious. There's been a few times where I can remember around in this room where council's been challenged by the findings of even a peer-reviewed piece, whether it's a traffic study that didn't take something into consideration that council thought was important, and so on. And I just I didn't see anything explicitly about sort of that next layer of elected officials sort of acting upon advice of and maybe not accepting. Like, have you? It happens rarely, but also, what happens in that scenario under this regime? Is this one of those vague pieces that needs to be fleshed out further? And I have an example if it's helpful, but.
Thank you for the question. We're just wondering if you could clarify that question a little bit further for us. Thank you.
I was thinking of a scenario where the a parking use was going to be split between a residential and commercial, but then the traffic management plan didn't speak to that and made some assumptions about the operations of the building that we were looking at differently. So it's accepting then council suggested that the traffic management plan wasn't adequate and it went away and came back. That kind of scenario. Is that something that would fall, which I believe comes through, an engineer would be looking at that traffic management piece? This is already complicated but this is an interesting one.
It's an interesting question. I think that this bill is, it's speculation, but it's probably an attempt to eliminate any kind of review by council or staff of professional submissions. Currently, the way it works is the professionals submitted, our professionals, if we have them on staff, will review those submissions and either send it back for changes or accept them. And then at that point, a particular development might come to council with that submission already accepted, or will, if the applicant demands it, they want to proceed forward without staff's acceptance of a submission, we will bring it to council with a certain recommendation not to proceed on it. That would be one scenario. Council in certain cases have discretion to make decisions. This bill would probably have an impact on that scenario. But there are also situations where council shouldn't be making decisions on technical reports. Council has to consider the social impact of a certain development. May not be, it just can't be based on a technical issue that may or may not be addressed. If it's not addressed, then yes. I don't know if I.
No, that's fine. I know it's not something that we that has happened very often, and I don't know if it should have at the times that it did, but at the same time, that interaction piece where we're making a decision based on professional recommendation, which is what we're discussing here, that sometimes and rarely isn't accepted. So I'll leave that aside and I'll think about that. But I'm thinking about the times where we have taken different approaches to like the development of the plan around the Chikai debris flow barriers, like incredible example of like, so we would just, here's the plan. And that's what would happen under this scenario without that sort of co-development of and that peer review process that was taken throughout that. I wonder if it's worth citing the successes we've had of like not being obstructionist with this, but the way we have been and can be collaborative.
Thank you for the question. The wording of the bill would mean that the district or district staff would have to request approval from the province to allow for a peer review to occur. So the construction of the debris flow barrier and that design review would be an exact example where it's complex enough, but it has to go through the province for that approval. The province could say no, and then we would not be permitted to do a peer review.
And I didn't see anything around conditions or like a threshold for price or complexity or risk or something like that to justify a peer review.
Through the chair, that is one of the issues with the unclear language in the bill, in the proposed bill, that there doesn't appear to be a threshold. So if municipalities are disagreeing with every submission that crosses their desk, it could severely clog that system. And that hasn't really been addressed.
Okay. Thank you for that. Council, we do have the draft letter. We have our staff here if there's any more questions, but if we could focus in on language try to focus in on language in the letter. I want to comment on your suggestion, Councillor Stoner, and I understand why it's not there. This is not that. I think that's actually a powerful statement. We have had success with this. This is not that. And then that might be something along those lines early on. I think could strengthen the letter, and that's how I would suggest if we wanted to include that, how we do that. We know what this is, and this is not this is not that. It might be, and we welcome conversation on our program if you'd like to, but then we can go into our comments. I'd suggest might be a way to address it, but although a little more thoughtful than that, but essentially communicating that. But Councillor Stoner, do you want to have another comment or thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I think the letter is really great. There's a few items that I would propose council consider adding, and appreciate why staff haven't put them in there. I think that in part this is very much a political lens that I would like to add to it that I think is important for consideration. So one is how Squamish and other local governments are using the certified professional program to expedite processes where functional and feasible. I have a real issue with centralizing approvals and complaints process through Victoria-based superintendent. And I think that this risks further delaying processes, not speeding them up, and how it's extremely contrary to the good work the province has been doing over the past 2 years to expedite provincial permitting for housing through the Permit Connect BC process. So this goes contrary to like work that the province has been doing for 2 years to try and make it easier to permit things. And then they're adding another layer of let us also provide you with approvals and centralized complaint processes.
Sorry, just on that point, there was some language that jumped to me around the UBCM letter that or document that said it was like creating new bottlenecks. There was some good language in there. Is that?
Yeah, I'm trying not to wordsmith the letter specifically. These are just elements that I think.
Yeah, I'm just looking for hunting ground. So as I
strengthen,
take the direction, yeah.
And then the third component to me is that I really think that this bill, if it were to pass, combined with the legislative changes through Bill 44 that made significant changes to the public hearing process, would greatly undermine the voice of local community and elected authority in land use, zoning, and planning. Like together, those two things basically mean that we don't really have any say anymore, with the exception of like OCP. And so I think from a governance perspective and the role that we hold and our community expects us to hold, I suspect that that is maybe a tricky place for staff to comment, but from a political lens, I think it's important to voice that. And Victoria, I can send these to you in writing. And just that both our letter and our submission would be CC'd to UBCM would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, so it's the our professional alliance program being mentioned, the sort of that new bottleneck and undermining their own policy, and then the undermining or erosion of local authority autonomy, or the sort of the three pieces. Go ahead.
Yeah, just from my perspective, for what it's worth, it does feel like this is a solution without a problem. It seems to be an assertion or an implication that there's some broad obstruction across all municipalities, as opposed to there may be a few really challenging issues in a couple very specific places, but I'm not, LMLJ had feedback on this as well. I'm not hearing or seeing from members and people that this is a general problem where we're trying to obstruct housing. We're trying to find ways to do it. And so this just seems like a very heavy-handed reaction to broad brush reaction to something that is probably very specific and needs a specific solution, specific cases. The other thing, I just wanted to pick up on one thing Councillor Stoner mentioned. We want to be careful how we word anything about not centralizing in Victoria, just recognizing that there have been a fair number of requests for a centralizing provincial, I can't remember if it's what the term is, facilitator for code of conduct. And yes, and I just want to make sure that we're not wording it in such a way as like, we don't want anything centralized in Victoria, that we're very clear that we separate those. So.
Yeah, thank you. I like the suggestion. So I mean, I love the term "a solution without a problem," but in there, is there those 3 bullet points that Councillor Stoner started us with, which is the provincial bottleneck or moves the centralization, the undermine local authority, and our already existing professional alliance program. Do you see an additional point in there? I'm just from your comments, I don't know how to I'm just not sure the solution with a problem besides solution without a problem besides some of the comments we've made around, we're not sure the desired outcome here and how vague everything is, the other language in the letter.
Yeah, I guess just in my head, just a sentence or two that such a broad, far-reaching legislative change really requires strong evidence of a big problem, and that doesn't exist.
Okay, no, that's thank you. I think we're trying to get at that with some of the language in the letter, so we can maybe adjust that. I do think that the piece around undermining local authority, your comments around being really mindful how we say some of these things is important. There have been quite a few people pushing back really hard on Bill 44 and so on in this case, which and other steps, which hasn't been sort of the direction that we've been taking. So I think it is that's another area we need to be careful how we word that, so we're not we're objecting to the piece that we're objecting to, not implying that applies to other things. If there's no other comments on this, maybe we can figure out a motion here, which would be that council direct the mayor to write a letter, largely in the form as presented, with additional comments around centralization of decision making to the province, undermining local authority, and some comments on our existing professional reliance program. And if it's seconded, yeah, I don't have a large amount of comments on this that aren't covered. We haven't covered already, so I do think it is important to provide the feedback and see where this goes. I know that our local governments around the province have been voicing their concerns, and I'm happy to add ours to that. So thanks for the discussion today, and thank you staff for putting us in a good position to have an informed discussion. So yeah, thank you. So any other comments, Councillor Stoner?
Now that we're in comments, I don't have to withhold quite as much. That I'm just so disheartened to see that this has gotten to second reading. It's like, it baffles me that given how much work the province has already downloaded to us on housing, that they then think that it's okay to move this private member's bill to second reading and then just say, it's okay, you can have an opportunity to provide feedback. And here we are, one of 186 local governments, 5 area associations, and the Union of BC Municipality have put in so many time and resources. And I thank staff for recognizing my previous comments on this and adding a line in here about how much time we spent on it. But it is infuriating that this is how they want us to spend our time, as opposed to actually addressing the issues that are on the ground. So that is directed to the province. Thank you, staff, for your professional response, for doing the amount of due diligence and outreach that we know is needed to make sure that we have comprehensive reviews and responses when things come across our desk like this, and the other things that we do, like engineering and planning, in a really great way. So I am very thankful for the work that has gone into this, but really dismayed that we've had to put the time and energy into doing it.
Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I support the motion, and I support all of the feedback that we've heard from council, and that being contained in the letter. I have full faith that the final version that you crank out, Mayor Herford, will achieve our objectives. I'm just wanted to check in. I heard this motion covers number 1, but does not take into account number 2 in the staff recommendation. So when we're finished with this vote, I'll move the second part. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Pennegill.
Yeah, just thanks to echo staff's work on this. I don't understand this. It just, like my colleague said, not just why. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I have a lot more to say on this too, but I think we're going to say enough in our letter to be palatable. I'm going to, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. Support the letter. The question Councillor Pettingill brought up at the start of this conversation, which is if there's a perception that the municipality or staff experts are obstructionist in the development process, even the impression of that needs to be addressed. But this is not, I can't see this as a productive way to address that. Removing a municipality's ability to oversee or to check the work of any professional that submits work that we're making significant decisions on. I can't see that's the way forward. So I hope that we can work to, if there's any work we can do to reduce the perception. I don't believe that we slow down development in any way. We do our work, our staff does their work for the betterment of our community to the best of their ability. If there's a perception that there's obstruction, we need to address it, even the perception. But this is not the way to do it, because we will lose power, authority, and community. We will lose the support of the ability to clearly communicate that we have our community's best interest at heart, because all of that will be taken out of our purview. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Councillor French, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah, I want to make sure that staff gets their voice in on this as well. So I'll move part 2 of the staff recommendation.
Councillor Stoner seconds. We'll just assume the same comments stand if that's okay with council. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So next we're on to, thank you very much. And now we're on to item 8B1, the Marine Impact Study 2026 Scope and Funding Opportunity Discussion. We'll give staff a moment to get set up and we'll get underway. Okay. Over to you if you could introduce yourself and the topic.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sarah McJanet, Manager of Community Planning, and I'm here with a colleague, Patricia Ng, Community Economic Development Officer with our Economic Development Office. My pronouns are she and her. We have no slides tonight. This is a verbal update. The staff report before you presents the purpose, scope, timeline, and resourcing for a 2026 Marine Economic Impact Study and requests a council motion to pursue an identified federal grant funding opportunity to support the study. So in a nutshell, this project was originally in Economic Development's budget in 2024. The work was delayed and rescheduled to 2026 due to capacity constraints. Planning will lead the project in very close collaboration with Economic Development. We have an allocated budget for consulting services of $40,000 from reserve, and $40,000 is noted in the financial plan from grant sources for a total special operating project budget of $80,000. Staff have identified a fund matching opportunity with PacificCan, or the Pacific Economic Development Canada, from its Community Economic Development and Diversification Program. The CEDD program invests in projects to grow new, existing, and transitioning sectors, and the Marine Economic Impact Study is a good fit based on our initial discussion with the funder this fall. The CEDD program specifically funds community economic research, analysis, and planning, which was very exciting to hear. Activities to identify and assess economic opportunities in order to inform community planning and economic development, diversification, and resilience is how they describe that funding stream. And so this includes assessing economic needs and planning to respond to them. Our next steps to pursue this funding is to submit an expression of interest to the funder, which is required to advance to a full application stage. So it's essentially a two-step process. And if successful with that two-stage process, program funding would be available in Q2 of 2026. So we understand from the funder that they will be accepting expressions of interest, and they will be looking to make a decision on funding applications in the first quarter of 2026. In terms of purpose and scope, the marine impact study will assess the impact of activities that occur within and are dependent upon marine areas in Squamish. Essentially, the focus is on activities that are geographically connected to and linked to Squamish. The aim is to create a comprehensive profile of our local marine economy and surface sector strengthening opportunities for marine economic activities to aid planning, programming, funding, and business attraction and retention. The composition of the marine sector is unique. It's comprised of a composite of subsectors that depend on marine waters. And so this is including, but not limited to, transportation, as well as marine shipping and logistics, marine construction, natural resource sectors like forestry, oil and gas, fishing, as well as tourism and recreation, ocean tech, boat building, refit and repair, as well as government and public services. So it's quite an interesting and unique composite of subsectors. So the work will measure the spending and employment associated with these marine subsectors and will give us a baseline of local marine economic activity and quantify the economic, social, and environmental contributions of marine businesses and activities within Squamish and our region. We will be bringing on a consulting firm specializing in economic impact assessment with expertise in the maritime or ocean sector, and they would be engaging with local marine focused businesses, community organizations, and those beyond the region whose activities depend upon and relate to Squamish's marine waterfront and related upland areas. This firm will also be essentially collecting data for the impact assessment, as well as insights for future marine sector needs and opportunities. So our recommendations tonight, number one is that Council receive the update respecting the defined scope of work for the marine impact study. And secondly, that Council directs staff to submit an expression of interest to the Pacific Development Canada, or Pacific Can's Community Economic Development and Diversification Program intake for 2025-26. We're happy to answer any questions of Council. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Council, questions? Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Ms. McJanet, I just wanted to clarify, first of all, some wording that is in the report to Council. I'll just read it out as a sentence here. The Marine Impact Study is scoped to assess the impact of activities that occur within and are dependent upon marine areas within Squamish. Activities that are situated geographically beyond and have no links to Squamish marine areas will be excluded. I'll just throw out an example. What would this mean for a company in the BC Rail Squamish Yards that has or hopes to have or does have links with the shipping firms in the harbor? Would we be able to consider them? I just wondered what the import of will be excluded might be.
Thank you so much for the question through the chair. When we say linkages to marine activities and marine areas, we most certainly would be including interest holders that are or propose to use marine areas for shipping and logistics that have that connection to local marine area within Squamish. So we want to be inclusive in the scoping and the work and the terms of reference. We would be articulating that and defining that, and also engaging with community around making sure that we've got the right engagement happening with the right folks that are connected to the marine economy.
Sometimes in some such studies, notably in, for example, in forest industry employment impact studies, trucking is missed. Sometimes professional services can be missed. And the way to capture them can be to use NAICS codes. Well, this might be an approach that the consultant we might be working with may be taking. We have probably about 12 to 16 trucking companies in Squamish alone that are with constant traffic to the harbor, just for example.
Thank you for the question through the chair. Yes, absolutely. The NAICS codes are a key piece of data that the consultant would be reviewing and looking at. And I wanted to highlight also that these analyses, these economic impact studies do typically follow a traditional methodology to identify and quantify the sum of all these activities that are happening. So it captures direct, indirect, and induced impacts of all these variety of marine activities that are connected to marine areas and the ocean economy. So yes, to your question, the NAICS codes will be looked at, and we are also have the benefit of looking at some really excellent examples within Canada and the Pacific Northwest that will allow for some good guidance for us to make sure that we are capturing everything we need to capture.
Thank you. Another question I have is there is a reference to partnering and or participating in this study. That is, geez, I should have captured the whole thing. This is a reference to the Squamish Nation. And I just wondered if you might have an idea of what kind of partnership or participation might be captured there. It could, well, I actually, I wonder whether you might be able to characterize where would we go in partnering with the Squamish Nation in this study? Is it an involve or is it an inform? Well, how would you characterize it, the potential?
Thank you for the question. It's a great one. And in terms of identifying where on the IAP2 spectrum we would consider involvement or sorry, just participation, we will be submitting a referral or a letter of interest to the nation through their Squamish Connect portal to identify the work that we have on our work plan for 2026 and the funding opportunity that we would like to pursue with council's blessing, of course. And so we would be informing the nation firstly about the work that's happening and then inviting them to find out if they would like to participate with us. So they would really be giving us a sense of how they might like to participate. Certainly a greater degree of participation and involvement beyond simply consulting on it would be ideal. There is an opportunity to, through the federal grant application, to seek a letter of support or endorsement, and also to present the proposal as more as collaborating partners. We are interested to understand where, if the nation is interested in participating with us and how they might like to participate. And also through grant funding opportunities, we like to look to see if there is opportunity for capacity funding, for instance, which we've had some success with, which would allow for more resourcing and meaningful participation of the nation as well. So that's also an opportunity for us to explore together. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. McJanet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, thanks to staff for pursuing this opportunity and trying to find a way to get it back up and in our budget and running. I just have a question around the proposed approach and methodology, and building on one of your responses, Ms. McJanet, around using kind of the traditional economic impact analysis approach. Back in 22, we did a fair bit of work with economic development to actually reorient the way that we think about our economy and try and adopt more of a donut economic model and recognizing the social foundation and the ecological ceiling of the work that we do. I didn't really see that reflected in this proposal. So I appreciate that is a little bit more of a higher level approach, but I am curious how it might trickle down into something like this.
I'll start and then Patricia would love to add something as well. So thank you for bringing up the donut economics. We really, that's a very compelling way to approach economic work. And so we very much would like to speak or explore those opportunities for going kind of beyond the traditional. When I say kind of recovering our bases with a traditional methodology, that doesn't mean that there's not room for bringing in specific focus around and approaches like donut economics and appreciating sort of the social and ecological foundation that we are here to support in all of our work. So yeah, I think thank you for bringing that up and that reminder. And I think there's an opportunity to build that into our request for proposals as well. Patricia, do you want to add anything on that?
I think you covered everything, but we have been researching various consultants and ensuring that this is question that we're asking to ensure that everything aligns with our priorities and strategic plan. And certainly when we work with various proponents or looking at their proposals, we will be looking at all of our plans and priorities and ensure they're aligned. But it has been a big topic of conversation to ensure that it is included. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Okay, I'm at the end of my speakers list, so I usually signals we're ready for a motion. Councillor French, staff recommendation, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, please. Thank you. There is definitely much that we want to accomplish where our lands and our waters meet. And getting this federal grant would definitely help with some of the objectives that we have in the marine world. And it's always easy to support motions like this that ask council to give direction to apply for grant funding.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Recently, we were in Victoria meeting with the Minister of Jobs and Economic Development regarding the potential of Squamish being a part of a regional economic trust. The island's coastal trust, to which the Sunshine Coast and the island and further up the coast belongs, often have projects like this, and it would be nice to have that type of pot of money to dip into for precisely this kind of project. Good on staff for being able to identify this federal program as an option. But I think it's something that we might remind the province of as we continue that discussion towards perhaps, hopefully, being a part of some kind of a regional economic trust fund. The Northern Development Initiative Trust, which the northern part of our SLRD region belongs to, is undertaking right now a study. It's just being in the process of being approved, which will involve Squamish Harbour. As we all may be aware, the CN Rail has decided they want to quit the rail line between Squamish and Hunter House. And there are other actors involved in pursuing opportunities. And there is a limited time for this to all unfold. And any operator that's going to come in and operate on this line is going to be interested in Squamish Harbour and our multimodal or marine intermodal shipping facilities. We also are interested in keeping an eye on the Federal Trade Diversification Corridors Fund. And some of our engineering staff already have experience with a similar fund from a few years ago. Squamish Terminals and Site B operators are interested in this. And this is something that a study, once we're done, will be very useful for future applications for a fund like that. It's a $5 billion fund, money that we shouldn't be leaving on the table. Finally, a couple of points. There is mention of Inchikai Development Corp, and I just wanted to advise that there's a landscape of competing companies in our harbor, in the forest industry, for example, and we need to be respectful that there is that environment and that there's always interest, and we should be respecting and interested in a level playing field between those firms. And that's what they would expect as well. So there's a multiple of companies like Inchikai, including other First Nations companies in the harbor. And absolutely last here, a point I wish to make is that I think we should consider keeping the province informed of this project of ours. And that would be the marine branch of the Ministry of Transportation and Transit. And those folks should be interested and probably are interested in what we're up to here. We don't want to be forgotten by them as a key coastal harbor. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Other comments? Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I don't want to add too much to my colleagues, but I just want to flag one thing maybe for future discussion. It is actually one of my assumptions that we would give special attention or treatment to Inchkai. And maybe that's something we need to discuss, but that is sort of my assumption. Maybe that's not a valid one, but I just wanted to flag that.
Yeah, I think that's an important topic maybe for a future discussion, so we can understand that. That has come up a couple times today even. So thank you for that. Other comments? Speaking in support of the motion, as others have stated, it's makes it easy to support things that come with a potential funding source that is not the property taxpayers here in Squamish. On the work itself, I'm quite excited about what about this project, and I look forward to seeing this work advance, and hopefully we have a successful grant application to get it all the way across the line. So thank you for this and everything to get us to this point. Looking forward to next steps. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Okay, Council, we're moving into the later part of our agenda here, but we haven't really had a break in this meeting. We've been at it for a little bit. So we're going to take a 10-minute recess now, because we do have just a reminder, we do have the balance of the special to do as well. So we're going to take a 10-minute recess. We'll come back at 10 after 8. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. We're on to, so we're moving through, we don't have any late agenda items or correspondence action requested. We do have some items referred from the consent agenda under correspondence. So we'll go with the order that they originally appeared. So first is item, was that 6B3, the Coast Mountain Trail Running letter of request for a letter of endorsement for the Squamish 50. Who pulled that one? Was that, would you like to speak to it? I think there was a couple people interested in that one. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Penningill.
Yeah, just reading this, I know we have a policy where you don't require, or we can sort of be notified after, but this is here on our agenda. My reading of this, it was hard to tell, is that this is a for-profit, which makes it challenging. So I'm wondering if there is a mechanism we can or want to sort of say we support these sorts of things in general, or if that's useful.
Yeah, thank you for this. When this letter came in, and sorry, I could have started this one off. When this letter came in, I had staff investigate whether it fit the policy or not, because there is a policy that broadly says that the American write a letter of support on things that have been previously endorsed or such language, if appropriate. And that was, you're absolutely right. It is a for-profit venture. So there wasn't that ability to. So the question here is whether we provide, how far back we have to step to provide something, and whether that's of any use. I'm thinking about how, we do have, and I don't know what that looks like exactly to propose a content of that. Like in other cases where we have something similar, like a for-profit daycare, for instance, that would like a letter of support for a grant application or something, we cite our ongoing work on the childcare is important to the community, that kind of thing, without saying, and there wasn't really something as solid to pull from on this. So that's why it's here. That's why it's here. Councillor Stoner.
Thank you, through the chair. I would move that we write a letter of support in general for this sort of activity in our community.
You want to second that? Perfect.
Yeah, I appreciate not wanting to tread on supporting an individual business one over the other, but I do think we have strong policy that supports sustainable tourism in our community, and this is one of the key drivers of that. It has been an amazing event in our community in the past, and brings folks from across the world to this beautiful place to run on our trails, and continues to donate back in doing so. And so I think it's well aligned with our economic development work. Thank you.
Perfect. Councillor Anderson.
I think it would be nice if the Grand Fonda would write to us and ask for our endorsement. Thank you.
It's a great suggestion. Any other comments on this? Yeah, happy to write the letter, and the complexities around the for-profit piece. I want to make sure that we run past council, so I don't we can work together to stay on side. So, but happy to step back as far as is appropriate to provide a letter of support for events like this in Squamish. So happy to do that. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And then the next piece was, was the letter from MP Weiler. So item 5, 6B5. That was you again? Go ahead.
Yeah, just start off by acknowledging I find our MP to be very on top of global warming and the impacts and dealing with these things. As I listened to to CBC at my parents' house yesterday morning, I heard this minister, I believe, speaking about, as Abbotsford was flooding, trying to justify why the feds still haven't come forward on a lot of their funding. And she was talking about, they had a lot of verification of invoices to do still, and they're working hard at it, and it's just time consuming. So I thought it would be useful also, we came very close with some fires. We have not had the, thank goodness, as much as we've had some challenges with flooding the last few days, it hasn't been what the Fraser Valley is seeing. This letter is asking for feedback on ways to improve capacity and emergency management and community resilience, identifying gaps. And so I would like to highlight a couple points. I think it would be worthwhile for us to submit as a council if my colleagues were interested in that.
Okay, any questions or comments? I'm just reviewing the letter again to make sure I understand the ask. Sorry, Councillor Penning, I'm seeing, this is the, if I'm looking at the right piece, which is the reminder of the summer jobs, who can apply, how to apply. What's that, sorry? Oh, page 49, thank you. 41, thank you. This will make more sense. I think that my confusion there speaks to your first point about how just how on it our MP is with communication. So we don't often see two in the same. So I'm going to use that as my out for being in the wrong spot on the agenda. Okay, so it's directing to write your suggestion is that we write a letter to or make a submission to this process.
Yeah, I did have 4 points. I don't know how or if we want to handle this.
We do have till the end of February, so perhaps, yeah, refer this to a future committee of the whole, so we can engage with it, or with your perhaps with your suggestions, we might as well sort of surface those as early as we can, so we can address them. So yeah, that's my suggested approach, but at the will of council.
So you're suggesting just refer this now, or refer and mention the 4 points I had in mind as a precursor, or?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Or you could, I guess another approach is, I'm thinking about how we would engage with this. I think the other way to do it, another possible path, there's probably 100 paths here, is if we were to draft a letter for council approval at a future meeting, then you could include the feedback we hear here and we can fine tune it there. We'll have something to work from rather than just referring it to a future meeting. That might be another approach, but we do have a bit of time, and I want to make sure that whatever's written represents the will of council.
Okay, so I guess I will move that we refer a possible letter to a future meeting, including for consideration the following points. That the feds make good on long overdue already promised emergency response support and consider a pay now, verify later approach. Stop facilitating and enabling the very sectors that are accelerating the frequency and magnitude of these emergencies. We just had a discussion on donut economics, make sure we're accounting for the lost opportunity, long and short-term health, emergency response, and other consequences of our economic decisions, and be honest with Canadians about the full impacts of the decisions we're making. And if I can add to that, I think if we went into some of our decisions with eyes.
Hold on just a second. You're going to, I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
So your feedback ended there was your motion. I'm going to cut that's the motion. And then I think what you have next is comments. So I'll second. And you're going to we're going to send that over. And as you're doing that, I will second it and you're welcome to make comments.
Yeah, I guess, there are a couple of practical things I think that I mentioned at the start, and then the others are sort of bigger picture, and let's not make the emergency problem worse. Is basically the short version. And I think, again, right now it's Fraser Valley facing this again predominantly, but we've come close ourselves, and we will unfortunately find ourselves in these situations increasingly, and so we need to find a different path. Thank you.
Okay, I'll come to you next, Councillor. So I just want to say that how I see this going is that we draft a letter that will include those points, but not exclusively, because we have our staff working in this space. So we'll delineate between the two is how I expect to do this, and it'll come back for a final approval, and we can debate the content at that point. Just with that caveat, I'll go to Councillor Anderson.
This September, I happened to run into some representatives of the Simon Fraser University Center for Natural Hazards Research, and they were full of ideas and suggestions for collaboration with the District of Squamish and other local governments in our corridor. They wouldn't stop coming forward with ideas and suggestions, very vigorous. It strikes me that if we do produce a letter, this is an institute that we should keep in touch with and copy a letter to. And I wouldn't be surprised if they may have some very interesting suggestions for projects in our area and things to alert this program to concerning our corridor. The Center for Natural Hazards Research at Simon Fraser University.
Councillor Anderson, if I could suggest, we're in an open meeting. It's an open agenda. I would encourage you to send this letter from MP Weiler to your contacts there, and so they can participate, engage in the process if appropriate, amongst other actions might happen.
Good suggestion, Mayor Herford.
Council, any other comments on this? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, so in the web page for the public engagement, the Government of Canada is seeking input from Canadians and emergency management partners on priorities, gaps, and opportunities to strengthen federal emergency management in partnership with other jurisdictions. So while I absolutely respect Councillor Pettingill's emphasis on the origin and root cause of the emergencies that we're dealing with, I think we would be well served to ensure that we have sufficient and significant content here speaking to how to manage the emergencies in the letter. And we around this table, I don't know that we contain that. We possess that expertise. So I'm hoping that staff do have time to respond to this in a meaningful way.
Yeah, thank you. And that's essentially what I was, what my comments were meant to reflect, that this, when council directs the mayor to write a letter on topics such as this, that absolutely comes through we engage staff to ensure that we're providing the feedback there. And then just like today, where we provided those extra layers, political layers, which we need to consider, I'd rather surface these now, and we can have that debate when we have a draft letter in front of us, is what I'm thinking. So I think that I aim to address concerns exactly like that. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And there was, the respectful workplace policy, Councillor French, I believe that was yours.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Herford. I pulled this because I have a few questions, and I have a motion that goes beyond simply receiving it.
Just before you do that, I just want to, as per our normal practice, if something's in the consent agenda, we're very unlikely to have the staff available, and definitely not necessarily prepared to engage with it. So you can try a couple of questions, but we may need to refer it to committee of the whole to get the answers.
Yep, I was fully prepared for potentially not having the staff here to answer, but I'll put it out there. Section 9 of the Respectful Workplace Policy indicates that council can request an annual report on quarterly respectful workplace updates created by Human Resources. So I'm wondering, how soon could such a report be produced for council if it was requested?
Thank you. Through the mayor, we could have a memo type report by January 6th. A report of this nature would not be extensive or detailed. You can appreciate the privacy that goes into it, but if it's a matter of numbers and resolutions, that can be done by the 6th.
My next question was a little more specific on timing, but that's been answered. So I have a motion that goes that staff be directed to provide council with a respectful workplace report as per section 9 of the respectful workplace policy, and that staff be directed to provide council annual respectful workplace policy reports moving forward, and further that the annual respectful workplace policy memo dated December 16th, 2025 be received for information. Oh, and if it's seconded, I'll speak to it.
You second, Councillor Hamilton seconds. Go ahead.
So, Council, I'm asking for this information because the culture of the organization originates with us. It's important for Council to have insight into the morale of the workforce. And in the months ahead of the labor dispute, I believe that relations between CUPE, the CUPE employees and management was fine, as relations between the union workforce and the exempt staff go through a mending process now that we've been through what we've been through over the last few months. I think it's important for us to do a bit more to ensure that we've got a better understanding of what the state of relations is within the district workforce. This annual report I see as being one part of ensuring that council really has a good understanding of where employee morale is at. And information is important, and the information that this report will provide each year, I think, will help council out on that front.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'll support the motion and thank you for bringing this forward. My only hesitation is that directing that work in perpetuity without having seen one of these. So I do think it's important that we see one, and potentially, depending on how useful that is, I may need to make an adjustment once we've done that. But I don't think getting into the nuance around that is necessarily constructive at this point. But I share the sort of the intent you bring to this, and we can have those as much as we're approving that with supporting this motion now, we can likely revisit that outside of the after receiving the first one if we see fit. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. So we have no business arising from the minutes. Any notice of motion? Open question period. So no hands for clarification related to agenda items tonight. Councillor staff announcements. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I have one. I went to December 6th, I guess memorial for the L'École Polytechnique massacre in 1989. Pearl Space holds it every year, and so it was as always a somber event, but good to connect with people and to remember why some of the work we do in terms of community building and making sure that we're taking care of each other is really important. And want to thank Pearl Space for taking the time each year to give attention to this, which is unfortunately still an issue today.
Thank you for that. Council, any other updates? I'll run through a few of my own. So since we last met in a regular business meeting, a couple things of note. On December 3rd, I had opportunity to tour the landfill and cemetery along with folks from the Squamish Chief with staff. So it was great to be on site, and I was really it was a great opportunity to answer questions, and it was great to see, honestly, the curiosity about these two projects. You may have seen some of the coverage already in the chief, and staff did a great job accommodating the tours, and I really do appreciate the curiosity on these pieces from the chief. So that was a good piece of work. On December 5th, which is a Friday. Councillor Hamilton, in his role as acting mayor, attended with me to the Squamish Nation Elders event, which was you're welcome to provide your own perspective, Councillor Hamilton. But from my perspective, was great to spend time with the nation's elders in their space at Totem Hall. I'm always feel really privileged to be invited to the space. And in preparation for this, they were asked if, what would you like? Would you like a presentation? Is there a topic we can prepare for? No, we just want to talk. And we had a great conversation, and that was really wide ranging and constructive. So, and then we shared a meal, and it was a great, it was a really good, I thought it was a great visit, and I look forward to a future one. Topics ranged quite widely, but a lot of things that we are that we're working on, and like other members of our community in other sectors, maybe not, as far and as fast as is expected. There were some things around some questions that were, highlighted the work that we have committed to under the memorandum of understanding as well. So, all in all, a good visit. That evening, I attended the Squamish 55 Plus Community Society Christmas dinner at the 55, and was again always it was an Elders Day. Now that I think about it, and it was a great event it was catered by Squamish Can, which has been using the kitchen at the 55, and it was produced in the kitchen there. They were the 55 Plus Community Society guests were ecstatic over the meal, and the catering there had been delivered in a bunch of different modes over my time attending this event, and this was by far the best period, and the best received, which aren't always the same. So that was great. And Crystal and her team from Squamish Can were kept very busy. And in a change of pace this year from previous years where there's been, community dance groups like performing and choirs, that sort of thing. They took a different approach this year, which was a seniors stand-up comedian, as well as a Elvis impersonator to finish off the night. So it was it was a fun change of pace and well received by everybody. Also, over the years, the relationship between the district and this group has been in various states, and wasn't in a great state a few years back. And it was great to hear from the folks there that they felt that the relationship was 1,000 times better than it was. So it was a good night. And as has been my practice, I took my my mother as my plus one with that. What else do we have on Monday, the December 8th? Had a visit to Mr. Guerin's class, grade 9 at Don Ross. They wrote letters to me and to some others around the table, and also to our MLA and our MP, depending on what they're interested in. So I essentially offered to come to speak to the class to address the stack of letters asking for various things. And I continue to be impressed with the youth in our community. Not just in the letters, which I'm sure were graded and, looked at and coached that way, but very, very thoughtful letters looking for asking for us to take action, not just on things that you'd expect, like recreation and, pools and ice rinks, which we spent a lot of time on here today, but very thoughtful things like, hey, I live in the Highlands and I can't I can't buy a bag of chips. I got to go all the way down the hill. Like very timely and well thought out challenges, but not just the challenges, some possible solutions and examples from other places to address these matters. So it was great to chat with them, and I think we've got some leaders of the future there. Oh man, I'm trying to go fast through this, make sure I don't miss anything. That's of course, on Wednesday the 10th, we had our budget engagement night. So thank you, Council, for all the work that night, and also to the community for coming out and showing up in the way that they did, and really, and how they showed up was, from my perspective, full of not concerned, but wanting to be part of the solution to the many challenges that we have, and approaching it with curiosity and asking great questions. And I really, as we've talked about earlier today as well, I did enjoy the that format of that event. It was good. Of course, what else do I want to go through here? I think I'm gonna maybe leave my update. Oh no, Mayor's drop-in. Sorry, almost. Mayor's drop-in on Monday was good. Again, there was a bit of a knock-on effect from the public engagement on the budget, where there were some additional questions around, particularly on the public safety. We had a good public safety discussion and talked about the how we make decisions to make investments in our in particularly in adding firefighters and RCMP staff, and it was a good opportunity to continue the discussion and go deeper into our fire master plan and its recommendations, and and helped me remember how we were phasing it and so on. So, but again, a great, respectful and curious conversation. So it's been a busy time, but those have been some of the highlights. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'd be remiss to not provide some feedback on what's been happening at Youth Council, and wanting to share some of the feedback. So in early December, Youth Council met to have their budget night, and we tasked them with a mock budget on a $10 million broken into 14 different categories that were pretty well mirrored off of our budget. There was a staff recommendation that was presented, and then there were 12 different user groups that came and had very demanding requests about why they needed to fund their particular advocacy ask. And then Youth Council was broken into 5 different groups to deliberate on how they were going to set their $10 million in their budget. They had the option to do a 5% tax increase, but it meant that the fictional town of Whoville would not have Christmas that year, and all things Christmas related or holiday related would not go forth for anybody in Whoville. All 5 groups stuck to their $10 million budget. Nobody increased taxes. And some really interesting high-level generalizations came out of the process. They were required to continue to pay their debts. Their debt payments were required. They weren't allowed to tweak that number. But all 5 groups reduced the amount going into asset management. They did not want to save for the future. No, I mean, there was like some money there, but most of them significantly cut their asset management budgets. Many, I'm sorry to say, also cut their planning budgets, and maybe that was a result of us not properly explaining the important role of planning in our community. And really interestingly, a lot of them actually moved a significant chunk of their environment and sustainability money just wholly over to transportation and transit. They just said that is environment and sustainability, is we just need more people on bikes and buses. So we're just going to put all of our money from environment and climate change and put it into transit and transportation. one of the summary comments that came out of it that really stuck with me was one of the youth said, "You think something is important going into it, but that shifts as you get into the debate." For me, that was especially for recreation. And that was one piece that I thought was really interesting. The vast majority of folks were going into it saying, thinking that they were going to allocate a lot of money to recreation, and most groups actually reduced the amount that was going into recreation because they thought that health, social, housing, mental health were higher priorities for them in this day and age. So just some high-level tidbits. I don't know if Councillor Pettingill or Councillor Greenlaw had any other high-level takeaways, but it was a really fascinating exercise. And we had 2 members of Youth Council come to the general public engagement session. And I think overall it was a well-received piece of work. They've also been actively working in our community to try and give back through the holiday season. A number of them spent 2 hours outside of Save on Foods trying to stuff the bus with donations in support of community Christmas care, and they put together 30 shoe boxes on behalf towards Helping Hands last night with Councillor Greenlaw. So an active set of folks in community. They're trying to do good work on behalf of the youth.
Thank you for that update. And I missed the mention of the youth council members showing up for the engagement, which I thought was amazing. So thank you for that and all the work on that. Councillor Greenlaw, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I guess I'll just add a couple observations of my own. And the primary one was they were all very interested in municipal budgets and how it functions. They were really, really into it, which is frankly a little surprising, but a super eager group of kids, and all they want to do is give back to the community. So it's really, they're a really great group of young adults and really fun to spend time with.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
Hot off the presses in 6 European countries are 2 German language publications, Forstmaschinen Profi and Holzmachen, with an article about Squamish in their December issue. And the title of the article is Squamish, a prime example of a region's pride in its forestry and timber industry, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It just gushes all about Squamish and their experience here. So back in September, a tour bus of 37 readers of these 2 trade publications visited us. And we started out early in the morning over at West Bar, and then visited Inchikai, Squamish Forestry, with Kayla Buckley and the big machines there, Spequis Park, Chamber of Commerce and local forest Ministry of Forest folks, Fraserwood Industries. And then we went to look for bears, and we didn't find any bears, but we saw lots of spawning pink salmon. They ended up with the day with a question: where's the beer? You know how German folks like their beer. Well, Darren Doak at JR Transport accommodated. He had 2 great big cases of Molson Canadian in his garage, and we finished off the day with just a super time with him, and everybody got a JR Transport baseball cap. And then they asked, why did we spend a day in Whistler? We should have spent 2 days in Squamish. So Squamish was their experience of Canadian hospitality, and I heard this from just about every one of them. They really enjoyed their visit here. We shouldn't underestimate what we can deliver to visiting groups like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. That update triggers some more questions, which I will continue in private. So if there's no further councillor staff announcements, we do not have a motion to close. We have a council staff we have an in-camera announcement that's there on the agenda. So now I'll be looking for a motion to terminate the meeting. Councillor Stoner by a mile, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor, motion carries. But don't go anywhere. We need to reconvene where we left off with our special meeting. I'm just going to check with staff to see if we need to do anything to link this next phase of the meeting with the previous meeting, or if we just stay on the same stream. So let's take a 5-minute recess just to make sure that whatever it is needs to happen happens, and then we'll reconvene our special meeting in 5 minutes.